Welcome again to today's session of Welcome Change, where we hear from social entrepreneurs and their teams from around the world about timely topics and solutions. My name is Nico Pablo, and I'm the Communications Manager for Ashoka Philippines. So we're thrilled to see all of you today from Ashoka's global community, and also a big welcome to anyone who is joining from Dr. Akkai's community. And for the next 30 minutes, we'll be discussing from trans visibility to liberation, building a gender equal world. And before we get started, I just wanted to bring up a few points of housekeeping. First, so we want to hear also from you as we move along in this session. So feel free to drop in your questions in that Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we'll get to as many as we can possibly in the second half of this session. For those who wish to use captioning, you can select the three dots that say more at the bottom corner of that Zoom screen, and then select show subtitles. But for now, I'd love to introduce today's guest. So Dr. Akkai Padmashali was elected as an Ashoka Fellow for co-founding Ondede, an organization that links different movements of sexual minorities, children's rights, and women's rights through areas of dialogue, research, and action. She was among the petitioners that paved the path to decriminalize gay sex in India, and she continues to be an influential activist and social entrepreneur. Welcome and good evening, Dr. Akkai.
Thank you, Nico. Happy Pride Month to all of us.
Happy Pride. Yes, it's a time for celebration and for queer pride and excellence. Yes. So I guess for us to start the session, Akkai, we know we've been hearing all the stories from India, right? Especially during these difficult times in the pandemic. So first off, like, how are you despite everything that's happening?
I'm beautiful. Just 2 days ago, I got my vaccination done.
Congrats.
The vaccination of being that was somewhere forced to go for vaccination because many of the community members in Bangalore, in Karnataka, in South India was showing so much of, fear, so much of misinformation about COVID and vaccination is concerned. So after going for vaccination 2 days ago, and now I told my many community members, see, Akkai is alive still after vaccination. So don't worry, just go. So I'm so happy that many hundreds of people are now going to, access vaccination, and the local governance is supporting us to access this vaccination campaign.
That's so great to hear. And I hope things get better. And I'm sure everyone feels the same. And it's great that you're vaccinated. So that's good to hear. Yeah, so I love what you said about opening with Happy Pride, because even though there are many problems in our world, Pride Month also reminds us that there is a lot to celebrate, right? And I think despite the pandemic being like this huge problem, I feel like there are still many issues that we can still talk about, right? And it's kind of stolen the thunder from other issues. So for example, I think with Pride Month reminding us about that there's still a lot that we can do for trans rights and trans visibility. And then we see also in like the mainstream media, a lot of trans representation is happening with like Pose or RuPaul's Drag Race, or with celebrities like Caitlyn Jenner and Nikki Tutorials. But a lot of these feel like they're Western examples. And so we would love to hear your take on what is trans visibility like in India and in South Asia.
Yeah, I think the whole issue of the transgender sexual minorities movement across the globe, I somewhat feel that there is so much of resistance, there is so much of barrier, there is so much of self non-acceptance, there is so much of lack of confidence about our gender and sexuality, accepting within. Until we accept within, it is so difficult for us to fight back any society. If you go back to the context of the Indian history, though India is largest democracy, having beautiful culture, beautiful tradition, plurality, irrelevant of your religion, class, caste, ethnicity, language, race, many aspects of it, India is so unique in that context.
Right.
Me, myself, born from Bangalore in Karnataka, the southern part of India, I feel so proud to be here. Why I say this? Because India, which is such a beautiful with plurality, I think I'm sitting in front of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, the person who wrote the constitution and spoke about only constitutional morality lives in India and not any other cultural, religious, caste morality exists, but individuals shall respect it. I think these are the very important terminologies I'm using. Coming from South India, in Karnataka, Bangalore, I somewhere feel that the 25 years ago, situation of the transgender and sexual minorities was not so easy. You were killed, you were beaten up, you were harassed, you were abused, you were sexually assaulted, you were charged false cases against you. The local society was not supportive. The police was so reluctant. The political participation was very far from the truth. So having said across sectors, across sections, that was against the transgender community and the sexual minorities. Why they were against? They said, we don't look beautiful and we are against the nature. And we don't look beautiful and we are against the order of nature. So keeping these sort of, myth and misconception about the community, and the profession we indulge is sex work and begging. Yeah, with that profession, that is something called unspoken terminology called sex and sexuality. And I think sex is nothing but very beautiful word and 3 letters. And people perform across the globe, and we should feel proud for what we do. From the country's topmost, the presidents to the common people perform sex. And why there is so much of shy, why there is so much of self-resistance not to speak. But as an activist, as a founder of an organization called Ondede, which is a convergence organization, we stand to speak about this. The last 15, 20, 25 years ago, as I mentioned, but today the drastic change has happened. The positive society has come. People are accepting. People are now being part of many other processes, including the law enforcement, the bureaucracy, the judiciary, the executive, the media, the political participation, friendly policies for transgender community. See, all of these are coming in favor because the 20 years of struggle, agitation against social phobia, against social discrimination, against all forms of arts that was in the community that people are and were fighting against us. So today, I feel proud to speak that the Honorable Supreme Court of India's 2014 verdict and the 2018 verdict has spoken about the dignity of a person. The dignity cannot be curbed in the name of gender and sexuality. Hence, it upholds the dignity under the constitution morality. I think the visibility of the transgender community, yes, we were part of culture, we were part of tradition, we were part of many other sacred books, including the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, many other aspects of it. But that is fine on the paper. But when it comes to practicality, people are having dual stand. They see one, they read one, and they practice one. So that cannot be compromised. And the human nature, human community, human religion will not accept that.
Right. So it's so great to hear that there are huge waves that are happening and there are many changes that are happening. So you mentioned Ondede, which is your organization. Can you talk to us about what projects you're doing right now? Because I know that you're doing a lot, and I would love for everyone else to hear that the stories that you're doing right now.
Yeah. So Ondede was founded in 2014 because many other organizations in the country, almost 500 to 600 organizations working in different states, different sectors, different constituencies, more specifically about the gay man, the lesbian, the intersex, the Jogappa, the Marladi, the Shiv Shakti. There is a cultural diverse identity which comes under one umbrella called sexual minorities and transgender community. Seeing this when we wanted to constitute this organization or to form this organization with a quite liberalism perspective, talking about socialism perspective, talking about feminism perspective, talking about the liberalization perspective, you know, yes, there is gender and sexuality. The gender and sexuality topic is not only for sexual minorities. It also lies with youth community. It lies with women's activists. It lies with common man, common women, the intersex community. I think across human beings are part of gender and sexuality. The Ondede organization inception was in 2014 on the month of November on the date of 20th. I hope many of us remember 20th November is a day of significance to remember the transgender friends who gave up their lives, who were killed, who were assassinated. That's how the New York, the Stonewall pub, which was attacked by the fundamentalists, keeping that as significance. Today we celebrate Pride Month in the month of June across the globe. If you want to celebrate that in each country respectively, and India has so many incidents like that, be it the 2004 gang rape case in Bayapanalli, the Hathras rape case, the Delhi gang rape case, the Hyderabad gang rape case, like this, you can see so many incidents for us to celebrate each and every section of it. But 1960s, what happened, I think the world needs to bow its heads. The Ondede organization came together as feminist organization, talking to many other aspects of movement leaders. We came together, yes, gender and sexuality shall be spoken to the child rights movement, the women's rights movement, the youth rights movement, the common class, caste, and religious minorities movement. We need to break the barrier. We need to break all sort of shatteredness, shyness, and ensure we are going to build a movement of convergence to support and raise solidarities between the oppressed communities. And as a transgender person, I need to be open to understand what the racism means to, what farmers means to, what women's rights activism means to, what globalization means to me, what privatization means to me. I think we need to understand between two, sections, and that's how we'll talk about mainstream in society. Yes, only because of a transgender, we cannot think or keep thinking only transgender issue, and that becomes selfishness, and that becomes quite, like thinking for yourself than others. Yeah.
Right. So that's
and Ondede organization, we work on issues of sexual violence, domestic violence. We work on the campaigning, advocacy. We train the Karnataka Police Academy officers, train the judicial officers. We educate the mainstream society to ensure there is no discrimination. People shall not face any discrimination or social exclusion on the grounds of gender and sexuality. If so, that's against social justice.
Right. And I think that this is such important work that you do, and this is an important vision of amplifying and converging all these diverse voices and all these marginalized voices to act as one, to enact change, right, across every sector. And you did mention two particular projects, right? First is with families and abuse, and then the other one is also with police and nonviolence. So can you talk about those two projects a bit more? And what have you achieved with these? Sorry, Akkai, did you get those questions? I think you cut off for a bit.
What I understood from your question, the two main projects that Ondede is handling, and what are the outcomes of the project? Yeah?
Exactly.
I think the project specific, talking about sexual violence, domestic violence, and the recent pandemic which occurred, how the common people's life was affected in the name of pandemic. Ondede as a convergence organization, we are able to get movements together to speak on gender and sexuality, to build support and solidarity system for society. Ensuring we also have the wings like the study circle group, where we do a depth analysis and discussion, debates, differences on the issues of politics of sexuality, politics of gender, politics of authoritization or authoritarianism. Keeping this in mind, we ensure that the younger generation shall build such knowledge to combat further amount of discrimination, the sexual violence and domestic violence. Ondede has did its research when there was a gross human rights violation against transgender people in Mysore district. When there is a gross human rights violation and sexual violence against the sexual minority community, we did research and brought 2 reports before the state and said this is what is happening. And these reports were supported in Supreme Court judgment in 2018. The section 377, it is called the human sexuality judgment and not the gay sex judgment and not the transgender sex judgment. This is how you take up the initiatives. In the pandemic, we spoke to individual members, leaders. We found that there is enormous amount of discrimination. People were not access to social entitlements, medical benefits or medical entitlements, or be it oxygen, the Covishield vaccination, or beds, or nutrition food and the rations. People did not receive it. And one day it challenged before the Honorable High Court, questioning the notion of the government. And finally, we received 9 interim judgments by the Honorable High Court of Karnataka, and very unfortunate that the judgment was not implemented. That was what we expected for. As an organization, we are a grassroots organization. We work with people. We always be with people than in office. We strongly believe that the organizing, mobilizing, collectivizing is a challenging part. But for Ondede, that is not an issue because we are with people. We stand with people. I think in the COVID time since last year, even though my staff team was affected of COVID, our interns, volunteers, we lost them. They're dead. They were died. But the passion towards that is still in existence. And Ondede has registered as trust, and we are a non-funded organization. Whatever people contribute to us, that's how we survive. And through this forum, I would request many people who are watching, who are visualizing, who are viewing this to support our work, support and donate us and contribute to our work. That's how we can build support and solidarity, and we can do much more activities to reach the global audience.
Yes, and I'm sure we can share the link in chat of your organization and how to support it. But it was also, I think, very interesting for me to hear about your work with the police and how you talk with the police to advocate for nonviolence and to take into consideration like sexual minorities. Can you talk more about that work also?
I think when I was a beggar and I was a sex worker for 4 years, when I was engaging in sex work, the police violence was at most very discriminatory, forced to have sex with them, rape, sexual assault, everything has happened. But today, to see the last 20 years and now, we have been invited to the Karnataka Police Academy to train the police officers on the concepts of sex, gender, and sexuality, human rights, challenges, struggle, activism, the Supreme Court 2 judgments. Keeping all of this in mind, I feel happy. And the police officers who tortured me just 20 years ago, they were part of these training sessions. After listening to us, listening to my words, they felt sorry for me. Akkai Amma, we feel so sorry for what we did. I think that is a real social change.
Right.
That's a real social change. We are not here to be as an anti-social elements. We are not here as to be a terrorist or whatever people can call us in many tax names. I think that's not our issue. Our issue, we are born with this, and this is our identity. This is how we want society to accept the way we are. That's why remember this, whole slogan called the World Social Forum slogan, judge not, support gender identity, judge not support sexual diversity. This applies across the globe, and we as community are facing that. I understand there is a discrimination within the movement, within the community. There is class discrimination, there is language discrimination, there is wisdom discrimination, there is sexuality, sex, gender discrimination within. We need to address. Apart from that, apparently or simultaneously, we need to also address the broader and larger society. How do we combat social discrimination and social exclusion without addressing the issues of sexual minorities? And that cannot be and never be social inclusion, and that will be against social justice.
And that's super interesting. And I think many people would be interested here. So the police used to be like your enemy almost. How were you able to set them down? How were you able to get them in the same room? How were you able to reach them and say, there's something that we can talk about and we can work together on something?
I think we follow two strategies in that context. Number one, we go to field, we go to cruising spots, to hammams, to street sex workers, to cruising sites. We educate them what is the importance of being a sexual minority, number one. If such atrocities happens against the community members, how do we question back? Because police are human beings, judges are human beings, doctors are human beings, and we are human beings too. You got it. No one has a right to decide one identity because we are different, and for us, they are different from us. So we train them, we educate them how to question ourselves and how to question the authoritarianism. Keeping that in mind, when you train the police officers, I think I should thank the last 20 years and the last 5 years, if compared, the police violence has really reduced in the southern part of India. Has drastically reduced because of the young generation. Every 5 years, the generation keeps changing. Every 5 years, there is a new generation coming up to. In that context, even the new police officers, whatever problem happens, they call to the organization with Ondede and they seek our guidance. They seek our advice how to handle this. And the organization was a capability to educate and train to handle these cases. Many cases which police doesn't want to intervene, except especially the theft case, the robbery case, the extortion case, or the client beats us, or the client kills us, or the client attempts to murder. These cases are family non-acceptance. I think one of the unique projects that Ondede is doing called the Family Intervention Project. We work with the accepted and non-accepted family members, and my family works with that non-accepted family members, my brother, my brother's wife. They're so happy to do this. With that initiative, more than 40 to 45 families have been accepted, the children as they are. And we need to continue this project. We need to continue this social reform. We need to ensure that there is a social inclusivity in this manner. I think the police violence, the Gunda violence, the family acceptance and non-acceptance, and there's a whole society outside. I think we need to converge across society together and for a just and non-discriminatory world.
Right. I think that's so inspiring. And you did mention about this work of getting families also as allies to shift the culture, and also about how the younger generation is really being more open and they're really going to you. This gives us so much hope because we're seeing that the world can change. And related to that, we do have a question from the audience. And it's kind of related to family and the new generation as well. So I know that you recently adopted, so congratulations. And the question coming from the audience is, as your child grows up, what are the key systemic changes that you want to see in primary education?
I think education, I have my own stand on the education is concerned. What is education? Education is not about paper. Not about paper. Education is about interacting like this, sharing stories, sharing experiences, sharing challenges, understand the whole world, understand society. What is society? What exactly we are looking for society? You got it? Keeping all this in mind. My child have been adopted, and let me be very clear on this. As a mother, as a transgender woman, I'm claiming myself as a woman, I do not want to judge my child's sex and gender. Let my child decide the child's sex and gender. As a mother, I'm here to ensure there's a platform for my child to live in that, to grow in that. And let the child decide and come and say, Mama, I am this. If the child said on that day, I shall accept my child's gender and sexuality. Why I took this decision? Because I was judged, I was tortured, I was violated, I was discriminated by my own family, by my local society, by my own neighbors, my relatives, my local society have done this. So let me not do for the same thing to my child. And keeping that context in the future generation, I have a very big hope that society shall change, shall accept the developments happening across the globe, and ensure my child shall play a vital role. And adopting is my responsibility, but nurturing my child is a social responsibility, and that responsibility lies with each and every one sitting in the room and outside the society.
Right, amazing, very inspiring for all of us there. And so I wanted to ask also, for anyone out there who might want to learn more about the struggles and the challenges that the trans community and maybe any minority faces, but maybe is too scared to know more, how can they educate themselves more? How can they learn more? How can they be more connected to these problems that we're seeing? And how can they be allies as well in that fight?
I think this question, if you would have been asked maybe 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been answered to respond to. Because just 5 years later, I think 5 years before, we were not access to these sort of technicalities, be it the Zoom, the Google Meet, or the social media, and whatever. But now the technology has really improved. The world is now becoming the digitalized world. The pre-colonial, the post-colonial has now transferred to a society called digitalized, society. And the digitalized society has and have enormous amount of potentiality. With this potentiality, we need to keep connecting like this, either a month or once in 3 months, to just share what is happening in your region. I think that's how we connect to people. That's how, if something happens in Palestine, we can stand for support and solidarity for Palestine people. And I don't believe war. I'm against war. Why in the name of war we want to kill innocents, the people, the common people are dying there. So keeping this in mind, why are we not thinking from that context? I think such meets, such gathering shall definitely ensure, for people to converge and talk about issues, to bring a very strong and strengthening relationships between boundaries, between countries, between, like regions. I think, as I mentioned in my previous thing, the countries' borders are being made from a political sake and reason, not for human beings, it's for the political sakes. And we are beyond every political sake. We shall stand for humanity and human dignity, and that needs to continue till we die. And that's the message we are giving to the future generation as well.
I think that's such a great point. That we have all this technology with us. We have social media on our fingertips, and I've been fortunate enough to see how it is so beneficial to talk to people of different cultures and countries through Ashoka as well, and to just take advantage of all these tools that we have at hand to learn more and to be better allies. So finally, Dr. Akkai, going back to this, the title of this session, and this is a big question, but it's a question that's important and should be asked. Trans liberation, what does it mean for you? And what would trans liberation look like? How would we know that we have achieved?
Such an interesting question.
I know it's huge.
As a social activist, though I might be a transgender, I might be a lesbian, I might be a gay man, I might be intersex, I might be whatever I am, coming under an umbrella of sexual minority community. For me, that is not more important when you talk about liberalization or liberalism, because coming background of my experience, I found there is so much of social burning issues across the globe. And what are these global concerning issues? Be it your climate change, environmental injustice, the system of social exclusion. There is discrimination for blacks, white skin, because of your language, because of your race, because of your culture, because of your tradition, because of your religion, because of your ethnicity, because of your dress, because of your food that we eat. I think each and every section we are facing so much of discrimination, and the liberalism, that what the context we're talking about, transgender liberalism, until we address the larger and broader issues, in that context, it is highly impossible to accept liberalism for transgender community. So as a community, it is also a social responsibility to show support, build solidarities with other movements, with other communities, with other global audience or participants, or common human beings. Until we stand together as one community, it is highly difficult to speak about any sort of liberalism. So I am here not only for trans visibility slash liberalism. I want to talk a liberalism of every human being, and that's social justice.
Exactly. I don't think I could have worded it better myself. Freedom and liberation for trans people should go hand in hand with the freedom and liberation of all and the marginalized. So amazing. I think we've learned so much in just this short session, Dr. Akkai. And I think if anybody wants to learn more of your work, you can just go back to the chat and click on the links that we've shared there, and you can see what Dr. Akkai's work has been all about, and you can learn more about it. But thank you for joining us today, Dr. Akkai. I've had the pleasure of talking to you, and I hope you had fun here also.
Thank you, Nico. It was very pleasant to speak to you today. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us here. Please look out for a follow-up email with a link to today's recording and highlights so that you can browse them and you can share them with your networks as well. And we hope you'll join us next time, because Welcome Change is a weekly series about the future that we want to live in and the role that all of us can play. Our next conversation is on June 23, and it will be on advancing peace in the face of gun violence with Ashoka social entrepreneur Devon Pagan. You can sign up at the link in the chat. It's going to be shared there. And again, have a good day, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Akkai, again, and I'll see you soon.